All right, welcome everyone to this webinar brought to you by the Manufacturing Growth Alliance. Today we're hearing from Dennis Theis from Maynard Costerisan on tackling cash flow issues in uncertain times. So our agenda for today, Dennis will do a quick introduction, as will I. We'll get his presentation. Then if we have any Q&A from folks that show up, that'll be great. And then we'll do a little review and wrap up. This is a recorded webinar, so for all those tuning in, please do mute when not asking a question. You can use the chat. Participation is encouraged. This is kind of the normal housekeeping for any of our webinars, if you're wondering if you want to tune into the next one. I'm your host today, Dan Pete. I've been working on MGA since part of its inception here in the last year, but I've got a background in small manufacturing personally and business development in general. And we've got Dennis Theis, who's our presenter today, and I'll turn it over to Dennis if you want to give a little background about yourself.
All right. Well, thank you, Dan. I greatly appreciate the opportunity to do this today. And I've been with Maynard Costerisan my entire professional career, about just over 30 years. And throughout that time, I've specialized in manufacturing. And very excited today to share some insights as far as from a cash flow perspective. Obviously, cash is king, and we want to be able to monitor, track, and plan as effectively as possible, and that gets harder in uncertain times, and it's hard to imagine any times more unclear and varied than the last 7 or 8 months or so. So we'll share some insights there, and hopefully have an opportunity to get some questions and some answers back from our participants, and add value that way as well.
Very good. Okay, well, I'm gonna stop my share and I'll allow you to pull up your presentation now.
All right, great, thank you. All right. Can you see that?
We sure can. Yep.
Okay. Great. So from an overall standpoint, we talk about this tackling cash flows in uncertain times, and I'm not a big fan of the word uncertain, but it is pretty clear that it's meant something different, for everyone. And this picture is kind of ominous. It really, to me, it means, essentially you got a long road to go and you have no choice but to go through it, right? So hopefully that we can talk about various things today to make that road a little bit easier to travel. But I guess it would help if I actually did push the slides or push the start the presentation. Well, it wasn't that long ago that really the landscape looked more like this. From an overall standpoint, every day seemed a little sunnier than it is right now. It really did take on a different meaning. Just a short story. I did a presentation on how to prepare for a recession last September, actually, and a little over a year ago. And there were about 20 participants in that session, and I just happened to ask them, okay, of the participants, who regularly does cash flow projections? And about half the room raised their hand, about 10. And then I asked, how many of you have actually included in your projections a decrease in cash or in revenues that is 10% or more in the last 3 years? Not one hand. And to me, that means that individuals or financial professionals were we're only looking at the possibility of increases and not really planning for the potential of a downturn or a negative impact. And when, you know, I think overall we need to at least think of events that look like this. And so I think to a certain extent, March rolls around this year, and many individuals were, you know, of the ability, or, you know, or of the thinking that you know, we weren't used to seeing pictures like this, and as a result, it caused a pretty significant, you know, delay maybe, or difficulty in making those adjustments. So overall, you know, I think you know, things did become, you know, quite blurry. You know, I think the focus today is on smaller manufacturers, and you know, oftentimes those small manufacturers may have a significant customer concentration, and that could be you know, very significant, you know, to that individual company if they do have a that large concentration, and that concentrated customer was struggling as well. You know, clearly there were supply chain issues, and the ability to get products, and you know, were your suppliers even at work? You know, for a period of time, there was quite a significant disruption. You know, employees, you know, a myriad of issues there. You're trying to go through the process of doing cost cutting, and you know, physically figure out, okay, you know, that, you know, the sky is falling from a revenue perspective, and how, you know, how are we going to make this all work? I know just personally, now we're not manufacturers, but I do know from a cash flow perspective that, about March 10th to 15th, the cash just stopped coming in. People just stopped paying. And until the PPP loans started to roll out, that the overall cash flow just slowed down. Now, I've talked with several manufacturers that had very similar experiences, and you know, most small manufacturers can't handle, or aren't designed to handle, you know, a 45-day delay in overall cash flow. So I would like to throw out too, just ask the group, you know, a question as far as, have you experienced, you know, a cash flow decrease, or maybe better, easier way to look at that would be on a sales decrease of 15% or more for this year? Has that come to fruition for you? You know, there's quite a significant variance in this. I know of several manufacturers that are working as hard as they possibly can to keep up with the orders that they have, and then obviously, you know, many are struggling as well. Overall, we had to deal with the executive orders, and, you know, the myriad of programs that were coming out. You know, maybe that was you know, for smaller manufacturers, the PPP program, or various other ways to save on cash flow through payroll taxes, or what have you. Maybe you were able to you know, apply for idle loans, or something of that nature. In clearly having a remote and distant a distance workforce, and all the rules that swirled around that made that very difficult. The just from an objectives today, just want to make sure we talk about, you know, it may be just different in how you respond during this time versus the example that I gave when everything, you know, the sales just continue to go up. And, you know, the question is, are we going to have a 10% increase or a 15% increase this year? Well, the actions that need to be taken, if that's the opposite, are dramatically different. And so we'll talk about that, the key factors to consider. And then, you know, we'll talk about some basic blocking and tackling on you know, cash flow itself. And then what what actions, may help the most as you're trying to work your way through these challenging times with decreased cash flow. From a business function standpoint, I have a tendency to look at a business with these 8 functioning areas. And, again, a call today is designed for smaller manufacturers. So this may be a hat wearing exercise where the president or the owner of the company is wearing the sales hat, the operations hat, and, planning and leadership. Oftentimes we see that, a finance individual that is saddled or tasked with the responsibility of doing, monitoring cash flow, and may just be a single individual or a piece of somebody's time that can be allocated to that. So the reason I throw this picture up there is because I truly believe that no matter how big or small a business is, that they have these 8 functions. And so, our finance professional that is responsible for putting together, monitoring cash flow and making sure that that there's enough lifeblood to continue the organization, needs to be talking to all of these individuals, or these the people that are wearing these hats, because it may be 2 or 3 individuals in total that share or lead the charge on these responsibilities. So that we need to be more timely in our communications with these individuals, and make sure that we get their take on what could happen there. And in an instance would be, we really need to be in tune with, let's say we needed to do a product mix shift, and we're making something that has different options, and people just aren't buying the options right now. You could liken that to car sales. Maybe somebody's going to buy a $25,000 vehicle as opposed to a $40,000 vehicle, and that have a pretty significant impact on you. Well, we need to be factoring those things in, and it's awful difficult for the person charged with doing this. Let's say a finance person that doesn't have that frontline knowledge in order to be able to put together something that's representative. And you want it to be representative because overall, you're going to have to deal with the backside of all the other decisions that are being made, in sales or operations, factoring in maybe workforce decreases or potentially increases as you were trying to catch back up on orders or what have you. Makes a pretty significant challenge for somebody that isn't on the front lines with each of those issues. So really the only effective way that you can do that is to increase the communication frequency with those individuals. Maybe you establish a meeting every other week, or something, a component of a meeting where you are physically getting the time from these individuals that have the knowledge, so that you can factor in what they're telling you into these things. And I think that might be one of the biggest differences in doing this in sunny times, and as opposed to doing this in stormy times, is that the pace of change and what could change, just from a pure numbers perspective, is so much greater than it was when you were trying to guess between a 5 and a 10% increase in sales. That I think key questions to ask, related to this, and I did want to throw out another question. If there are specific challenges, I would like if you can put that in the chat feature, you know, just you know, maybe the most significant challenges that you've had from a cash flow perspective, or if you know other manufacturers that have had that. We'd like to deal with, you know, live situations here if possible, and so if you do have some challenges that have presented themselves, or that your most significant ones, that'd be great. And then, you know, if there's been any either pleasant or unpleasant, you know, positive or negative surprises through, you know, let's say the last 7 or 8 months, you know, from a cash flow perspective, that would be great to address specific questions, you know, related to that, if you're willing to share. So I appreciate if you would do so, and Dan can monitor that and toss those out to me as they come in. So, you know, obviously, in order to affect where you're at, you need to know where you're at in, you know, your current state. You know, looking at receivables and payables, you know, clearly overall cash balance, your debt load, and things of that nature, the major things that impact cash flow. And so, you know, just trying to, most companies would have a you know, a pulse on that. You know, some may not, but certainly in more challenging times, they're going to need to get a much better understanding of how cash is going to be impacted. You know, again, with all of these possibilities, you know, internal, external, that are you know, have a potential to significantly impact your cash flow, you're going to need to project the you know, the range of that. And which that sounds, you know, quite daunting, but still, I think the challenge there is to just try to keep that simple. You know, think about it for a little while, make a you know, an educated guess, and then move forward with that, so that you are not you know, physically going to be you know, immobilizing yourself, you know, through uncertainty. You know, think about the factors that, you know, obviously will decrease cash flow. I think it's important to you know, to focus on that, and try to focus on what you know and can project. You know, limiting the number of factors that you actually you know, combine in that process, I think, is important. You know, you could build something that will never be complete and never really help you, or you can, you know, kind of use the 80-20 rule and say, you know, what's most important. Well, okay, we have 3 major customers. We're going to focus on those 3 customers, and you know, so we're going to dig in the salespeople or the salesman that is responsible for those 3 customers. We're going to ask them to get us certain information on that, and on them, and, you know, continue to monitor them, so that we have the ability to at least, you know, for 80% of our cash flow, we got a pretty good pulse on that. And then really, and I think, you know, what norms are no longer normal. You know, our aging for years has been, you know, between this and this. Well, that probably took a pretty significant, you know, hiccup, at least for a period of time. And the question is that going to snap back as it did for some, or is this just the, you know, have we established a new normal, and where we were at 40 days receivables before, we're now at 60, and we got to figure out how to deal with that. You know, I think it's very helpful to have these management team discussions, and if you were a member of management, that, you know, to foster those discussions along, and maybe if you have your weekly or biweekly meetings, that setting time aside to talk about cash flow, I think would be very important. You know, your finance individual may not have you know, the ability or the desire to force that to happen. So you, as an owner or a key member of management, you can put that forward, carve out time to talk about different scenarios, and see, what's going on. Now we do have, a longer road developing here, looking back on, back to, March or so. But that doesn't mean that things are very, consistent or couldn't change, get way worse. If a specific customer, can't, survive this challenging time. From an ongoing communication standpoint, I think just dedicating the time to discuss on that. I think it's important to agree on, what are the most significant or important items there, and I think as a key member of management, then you can, communicate that, okay, yes, people responsible for, your sales director or what have you, you will need to get them, the projections, and what do those look like? This is different for everybody. So, discussing how this will impact you and how you as an entity can best, work together to come to the end result of a pretty accurate cash flow analysis is important, because that can be different for everybody. With lead times on ordering, getting materials, your own customer base, the industry that you're in, all of those things impact the time at which the cash goes out the door compared to when the cash comes back in the door. And just, collectively discussing that, I think will to come to agreement on how that process will work, I think will be quite helpful to an individual that is responsible for putting these projections together. So, how those will be monitored and can continue to be communicated. That could be as simple as, every other week, the director of sales is going to, give their update on what they see in the way of the order pipeline, or these are orders, these are the POs that we've received. And this is the information that we're going to, put into the process so that we can physically predict when those dollars will actually be coming back to us in the way of receivables collections. And a commitment to communication. I think it's very important to set aside a specific time for this. And if you don't, other things will just get in the way, and you will have a situation where it's hard to forget about cash flow, but you just won't be as prepared as you wanted to be to physically respond to the challenges that you have. Hey, Dan, do we have any questions that have come in?
Yeah, we've got a couple. I think up to you. I can throw a couple out that I think are pretty relevant to the content, or we can wait and see. Some of them are tips and tricksy, where they're asking towards the end. So. Okay.
Well, your discretion. So.
Okay. I'm keeping a nice list here, and I'll hit you with them when we get towards the end.
All right. Great. Well, we've talked a lot about this cross-company, brainstorming, and that can be a little more challenging. More people that you get involved in that. It's also challenging if you're wearing, numerous different hats to think about things in different respects. But at least calling the meeting should be a little bit easier, from a calendar perspective. But I think it's very important to think about all aspects of the business and try to pull that together to make that a most functional cash flow. Identifying the KPIs, your key performance indicators that will help you anticipate issues. Maybe that's your receivables aging, or just purely the number of orders that are coming in, or the quotes that whatever you track to to help you determine whether or not you're being effective on the sales side or delivering your product. I think will be helpful, or should be at least considered for the process. To physically discuss. Again, focusing around key customers and their customers. Knowing your customers, knowing what's happening to them, and that can range very widely. Because again, some are doing very well and some are struggling significantly. I think you have to make a commitment to reevaluate these forecasts and plans more frequently than you would have in the past. It's not an annual exercise. I think having things like a 13-week cash flow, which basically gets you through your next quarter, I think would be helpful. Try to keep it simple, and just keep plugging along to at least have that short window in front of you established. I think that would be quite helpful. And then I think extending that out further with probably a little less accuracy would be beneficial in uncertain times. And then I think if you're looking, as you're discussing these things with people, obviously there's different opportunities, and you have different questions that need to be answered, and depending on the answers to those questions, you may have different actions that you obviously have to take. So establishing like a hierarchy, or if you're in a cost-cutting mode, in advance, I think would be helpful. It may be that maybe that's personnel related, and okay, we're going to have a 10% reduction if we don't meet these sales targets. Laying that out in advance, and who and everything, thinking about it in advance can be very helpful, so that when the time comes, you're not bogged down in that process of trying to map it out. It's already at least thought about, somewhat mapped out, so you could be quicker to get to the action part of that. Knowing more about what's going on in your industry, again, your customer base, are they generally doing well? Are things turning around? Are they getting worse? How is this, the last, it could be a dramatic impact from the last 6-7 months on your cash flow, but how is that going to transpire into the next 6 or 7 months? And what's going on in your industry and your customers, overall from a supply chain standpoint, and vendor analysis. Are they on the rocks? Are they doing quite well? Do you have concerns about being able to get your overall material needs and everything met on a timely basis? Paying attention to those factors. Just talking about a little bit on the internal process. Clearly you want to be projecting out your cash flow, but also your overall income and balance sheet, working capital type items, so that gives you a more clear picture of what is going on there. That'll allow you to monitor your covenants and your, if you have any cushion, or how much cushion you might have in between having being in compliance and having a covenant violation. We talked about extending the projections out, a little bit further. Again, the further out you go, just probably the less accurate it's going to be, but what you're looking for is that trend that maybe could be a tipping point for the organization, and just trying to project that out, see which way that is going for you. If there are significant events out there, maybe customer driven bankruptcy or something like that could have a very significant impact on you. Sales volume fluctuations, again, keeping in mind the, the projections that your salespeople are having their, the product mixes. Is this a high margin product? Is this a low frills? Dan, are they, from your perspective here, are they ordering the cheap cider, or are they ordering the one that garners a few more dollars of sales price? And I think people's tendencies do change, and thinking about how those tendencies may change would be quite helpful. And then just the overall methodologies for cost cutting, and how that will impact the organization, I think is very important to start laying those things out. When we just some blocking and tackling opportunities, I think when we're looking at what can you do if you're in a situation where you need to bolster your cash flow, obviously reassess your long-term debt strategies. I'm assuming that you would have been talking to your bank throughout this time period, but sometimes that isn't always the case. And there's in good times, this is the best time to establish a great relationship with your financial institution. But it's never too late to start. Kind of like, when do you plant a tree, right? Today may be the day to start. And so open those lines of communications, especially if you feel that there are more challenging times coming down the road. I won't go through all of these, but the factoring of receivables, maybe you have not done that. Most companies don't. But selling of your receivables in exchange for a discount there may be a viable option. Maybe you own your building, and it's debt free, or you have a high percentage of equity in it, and that's something that can be refinanced. I think if faced with a significant enough cash flow challenge, I think that could be a very viable long-term solution for you. And again, it may hurt to do it, but given the possibilities, maybe more negative possibilities, that might be the easiest decision to make. And the other opportunities that are out there, maybe as far as a leverage recap, or some maybe selling off a portion of your business, or getting some other capital in some way, shape, or form. Too deep for today's discussions, but clearly not off the table as you look at trying to make the business survive. We talked about the ongoing communications before. Establishing that before you need it is I think would be quite helpful, and something that you should be working on a long-term basis. Again, from a blocking and tackling standpoint, I won't go through all of these, but I from a bullet point perspective, you may need to, on the receivables management side, you maybe take a fresh look at your credit policies. Maybe the implementation of those have been maybe a little bit lax.
How are you?
To refresh that, or maybe allowing somebody X amount of time to or to be late on their receivables. You can't allow that anymore, because it's going to have too negative of an impact on the organization. Maybe different discounting methodologies, or something to pull that cash in the door. Some sort of action might be warranted there, negotiating new terms with individuals, or just holding people's feet to the fire on if they're not living up to the credit terms that you physically have with them. Again, on the payable side, I think just potentially renegotiating new terms. I think that was pretty common, and even if it's temporary, going from 40 to 60 days on vendor payables. It may be a conversation that needs to happen, at least with key, potentially key vendors, in order to maintain that relationship and yet still make the turn, from a cash flow perspective. And inventory is probably different for all of you. So I mean, it's always a challenge there. But changing customer demand may put additional strains on the organization. Looking for alternative sources if you're either cut off or one of your suppliers or more are not maybe in the best of financial situation, which is entirely possible. And then overall on the cost reduction, I guess I just point out there the law of unintended consequences and how to work through that with your management team so that those scenarios are considered and factored into the actions that you're physically going to take. I think just a couple other things, how uncertain times may impact your overall approach, towards cash flow. Just the degree of uncertainty. These things have a tendency to, you may have been dealing only with a couple of variables before, and now you're dealing with several variables, and nobody has the answers. And I think that's probably the biggest challenge that you would have in putting together a cash flow analysis now, as opposed to, or making decisions in the cash flow environment now, as opposed to a year or more ago, when things may have been a little bit rosier. It's a pretty broad range of possibilities, and I guess what I would recommend there is that you just need to pick a road and go. Because and discuss it with people, lay out the assumptions. We assume that our sales are going to decrease by X. Don't know, but we got to make a decision. We got to move on and go forward with those. With those, you may be pleasantly surprised, or maybe you'll have to sharpen the pencil again and redo it as more facts are available. But you gotta just make a decision and move forward. The impact of external factors, I mean, is weighs very heavy on these decisions because there's so much that could be unknown, and so much more volatility in how a particular customer or vendor is going to react to all of the variables that they're experiencing out there. And then just overall, we're all trying to figure out what's the duration of this, what's the timing, is there going to be a resurgence this fall? We're seeing numbers go up. How is that going to impact people? I think we'll be better equipped to handle that, but really it affects probably every one of us and every one of our customers and vendors in a different way. And how do you boil all that together to make sense of it all? I think that from an overall perspective, what I would say there is just you gotta make some assumptions, make some decisions, and just cut the cord and move forward. And if you're wrong, you're wrong, but at least you made a decision. So, all right. Well, I'm certainly interested in the questions that our group has posed during this time frame. Dan, can you queue those up, please?
Yeah, let's start with one here that should be pretty interesting. So as an OEM, what are your thoughts on running a business with a large line of credit? Because building the machines we make takes high capital, and the builds can take months. So it's too hard to keep that much capital on hand at all times. So,
I think, I mean, in these times, you certainly don't want to be left without, a line of credit. I think it's a very necessary aspect, to the organization. And many bankers, many finance professionals would say that especially, I had a local bank president tell me that he was telling all of his customers basically just to pull their line in late March, and that way you have it. And essentially, at least if you have that cash, even if you're paying interest on it, and it potentially could degrade your profitability, you at least have the cash, and that's certainly a much better scenario than not having the opportunity to pull it. Which, if you look back to maybe the Great Recession, that was not an opportunity. If you waited too long, you might not have had the opportunity to draw on the resources that you had just a few months earlier. So I would highly recommend that be a point of discussion with your bank, and basically making sure that is something that is in place. How you use it, you can change as you go through there, but certainly having it would be very beneficial in these difficult times.
Great, thanks for that, Dennis. We had another one that was wondering how closing the books monthly versus every day could impact the cash challenge.
Well, I'll make some interpretation on that question. I think on the, I think you have to be monitoring your cash on a daily basis. So, I mean, you should always be monitoring, through bank feeds or what have you. Having that cash recorded daily, is extremely important. So that's a bare minimum, if nothing else, just to detect and deter fraud on a timely basis. There's many different reasons for doing it, but I think if you're doing if the only information that you're getting is on a monthly basis and it's 2 weeks after year end or month end, then I think you are putting yourself at a significant disadvantage. So but that doesn't mean that you have to modify or do a daily entry for payroll or accruals or anything like that. This would be 80-20 thing for me, and focus on what impacts cash, and making sure that that those factors are being monitored. Clearly cash itself, but then also maybe orders or recorded sales, looking at the receivables on a ongoing basis, and other things that impact cash. So even if all of the reporting isn't done, except for on a monthly basis, that the key components of it are done regularly, if not daily.
Great, thanks for that, Dennis. So let's say our company is unaccustomed to doing cash flow planning and or scenario planning. What would be some of the best ways to get started if maybe they're really small and they've never done that before?
Okay. The first thing that I would say is just look back at your history. Start with what you know, or and basically what is what's happened recently. So try to obviously get a handle on how the cash flows its way through your system, and just try to map that out a little bit. The majority of our customers pay within 35 days, or these customers do, and these customers are generally out there much further. So starting with what is available to you, and then just mapping that out, and then I'd kind of make it look like a simplified income statement, basically. And what are we going to be bringing in, and just maybe you start on a weekly basis. If that's too big of a challenge, you can start on a monthly, but I guess you got to make a decision one way or the other, and whatever. If you're just starting, then really whatever you're more comfortable with is what's going to keep you rolling down that path, which is the most important thing. And but if you can look at your historical averages, maybe over the last 6 months or so, and how that rolls through your organization, that's probably the place to start. Then you can, instead of looking left on the paper, you can look right on the paper and start projecting.
Great, thank you. What are some of the most common failure points that you see with small manufacturers and cash flow planning in general? Maybe not in times of plenty versus times of good, but what do they tend to miss out on quite a bit?
I think just not projecting out far enough to see the events that is going to have a dire or a very significant impact on them. And I think part of that is rooted in what I talked about before about maybe you have one individual that is charged with doing this, but they don't have the information they need from. It's not that the information doesn't exist, but they don't have all the information that they need in order to put together a valid projection. So you're again, salespeople might know that there's a bit of a cliff coming here. We have not had any success on the sales side or what have you, and they need to be communicating in communication with the individual, throwing the Excel worksheet together to monitor this, because if they're without that knowledge, how would they ever know? And so that's where I think this cross-functional discussion, ongoing communication is if there's anything I said today, and I know I've said it multiple times, but you need to incorporate other individuals into that process. This isn't just an accounting function. It's an organization-wide function that everybody needs to contribute to that process.
Great, thanks, Dennis. Here's another one, should be easy. Dennis, when will COVID be over? Just kidding, that was one. So there's a number of manufacturers who have seen a large increase in maybe just a few products, but not their whole product line as it relates to COVID. Any tips on how they might respond well to that into the future?
I think again, monitoring how if the only thing that's certain is change, right? So you may have gotten to a point of significant change in a month or maybe 6 months, and so is that going to, I guess, asking the question, is this the new norm, or is this is this something that will eventually reverse? What are we seeing? What are our opportunities out there? Because we talked about the kind of the negative side of cash flow here today, but realistically, you do a great job monitoring your cash flow, and that should give you a greater ability to take advantage of opportunities. And so the plus side of doing all of this is that maybe you can make some investments that you wouldn't normally have made. I think realistically, you just have to keep an eye on the market, and to the extent that you can, talking to your vendors. I think looking at that macro industry data, over the long term may help you, in those regards. But just the conversations, pulling in the conversations from your customers and from your vendors to synthesize through that stuff, I think it gives you the best opportunity to say, okay, well, this well went dry, but in 6 months, 10 months, a year, 2 years, we feel that that's going to be up and rolling again, and we don't want to abandon it. We want to at least put some water on it, keep the plant alive, and then when the sun starts to shine again, we can we can go back into growth mode. And I think that's, again, very difficult for a finance individual just sitting in a vacuum to make those decisions. That's a upper level management decision, and probably involves multiple people.
Great answer. Thank you. Maybe I got one more here. Maybe two, depending on how long your answer is. So one is, Dennis, in your experience, how would you grade companies in keeping their receivables clean? How will one of our small manufacturers know, am I doing good enough at this?
I think if you're discussing it regularly, that's probably a pretty good indication that you are actively pursuing the collections. Clearly from a numbers perspective, it varies by industry, but there's an industry norm, and you're either above or below, or maybe right on that industry norm. And what I would say is, how much time are you spending on that? How important is it to the business? Probably quite important. And we all have different experiences there, right? Are we continually dogging 10 of our customers to physically pay us? I think one of the negative impacts of that, the mode where you're always just trying to increase, you're trying to grow, is maybe you made some decisions that in the way of increasing growth or maintaining growth that you wish you wouldn't have made right now, and maybe you're saddled with some of those. I think it is a general answer that if you're not regularly discussing where your aging is, which customers are behind, what's the approach that we're taking with them, when do we expect to collect, then you're clearly not doing enough, and you have the opportunity to increase that or improve your performance by allocating more time. So I'll leave it at that. But if that's not a regular discussion, then you can definitely do more.
Great point. And just if it's possible, do a shorter answer on this. We'll do last question, and then we'll share the contact us. And thanks everybody. So some of our suppliers are unpredictable now in terms of what's available. Everybody, including our competitors, are doing lots of preemptive buying. We're trying not to overinvest in our production inventory. Do you have any advice or tips in this scenario?
I think that is a very interesting question. I guess what I would do is prioritize, what you can least deal without. Looking at it from a perspective, okay, I can't be without these parts, or the lead time on these parts, is 8 weeks, and if I don't have 3 on the shelf, I can't put the product on the truck, kind of thing. What another analysis that I would do there, are there alternative sources, and what does that come with? Yes, this supplier is 20% more, but we have the product, and we can get that $50,000 machine on a truck and get that cash rolling, physically rolling back to us. I do agree that there's quite a bit of speculative buying that's going on, and unfortunately, when there's the supply side challenge that you have, they're more than happy to sell what they, a supplier is more than happy to sell whatever they have to whomever they can, obviously, to improve their own ability. But I think, I guess I would just prioritize there, and if you're going to wake up in a sweat in the middle of the night, thinking about your bill of materials, what items is that going to be? Is it going to be the your main component, or is it going to be a series of other smaller things? What kind of issue do you have? How targeted is that resource problem that you have, and what possible ways are there around it? Maybe you can renegotiate terms, potentially prepay, for those things to get prioritized shipment. What levers can you pull? What kind of relationships do you have, and to get this adjusted back to normal, so that you can again get the product on the truck and move down the road.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Good answer. I think a lot of people are facing that one. So with that, do we have any last questions from the audience? I'll give it kind of a 3 count if anybody wants to unmute and ask one final one. Otherwise, we'll turn it over. And thanks again for everyone who joined us today. This is how
Thank you.
you can contact us if you're curious and want to see and hear more from Dennis. Go ahead and just join MGA as a network member, and it's a no-cost membership. And I'm happy to route you to Dennis for any of your questions. So thanks to everyone. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now. And it was a great conversation there. Thanks to all.
Thank you, Dan.